Hello, everyone. Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to my weekly behind-the-scenes DM-only live stream, Crafting Annihilation, which I build, write, and prepare for our next session of Tomb of Annihilation. If you're playing characters Mannix, Celeste, Gillian, George, or Theron, go away. You're not welcome here. It's full of spoilers. But for the rest of you, welcome. We stream our Tomb of Annihilation sessions live on YouTube every Friday evening. You can watch all of our D&D live series, as well as reviews and Let's Plays on my YouTube page, and read weekly session recaps at roguewatson.com. You can follow me on Twitter at roguewatson and join our official Discord discussion group. Invite link in the description below. If you'd like to support the channel, please check out patreon.com/roguewatson. Shoutouts to my platinum patrons, Andrew, Richard, Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, Nick, Andy, Grayson, and Chris. And gold patrons, RPG Papercrafts, Charming Grenade, Pretty Boy, Yuma, Marco Stade, Vicente, Gilberto, Sean, AK, Cert2B, Adam, Dead Lizard, Lounge, Sam, Rosh, and Olympus Buds. Boom! Getting good at that. Thank you all for your support. For our campaign, we use Roll20.net. For streaming, I use open broadcaster software with Streamlabs. Today on Crafting Annihilation, I have to wring my hands and worry because I have a bit of a dilemma that I'm going to have to work through. But first, we can do a bit of a post-mortem discussion on what occurred last time on Tomb of Annihilation. We're still in the middle of the Fane, really. Going pretty well so far, I feel like. It's hit kind of all the notes that I've wanted it to hit, and I feel like the players have also been able to have a bit of wiggle room in terms of what they want to do and how they want to do it. Hello, Mad Mage. Good to see you. Nick, welcome. The battle in the Armory, which the tokens are not there because I have since deleted them, did not go quite as I planned. I mean, few things do, but I expected this to be at least a semi-challenging fight. I mean, I realized the party was basically fully rested. They are level 8, which we actually haven't had a combat encounter up until then at level 8 yet. But I had put Celeste outside and kind of given her a side thing to do, which I think was fun and worked out pretty well. And the party was in a very unique situation, which was they were in a small room directly next to their enemies. So there was no maneuvering. So I always like it when fights add some kind of extra environmental element, whether that's a trap or being in having a cliff nearby or something that players and monsters can utilize. In this case, though, I think it actually swung in the favor of the players because one of the only things that a Minotaur skeleton can do is do its charging gore attack, and obviously there was no room for it to actually charge anyone, so all it could do is swing with its great axe. They only have one attack. They don't have multi-attack. And as you saw, assuming you, of course, watched last week's episode, which I hope everybody that watches Crafting Annihilation is keeping up with the sessions. That would be kind of awkward if not. I rolled like crap. And, it happens. It happens to the best of us. Everybody, it's sometimes the dice. What's funny is it happens to the DM and it happens to the players. And because it's dice, because it's random, generally it all works out. But there are some situations where fights feel like they are very challenging for the players, even though on paper it doesn't look like they might be too terribly challenging as opposed to another fight, such as that Yuan-Ti ambush fight we had in the water with the buildings and all that. I thought that one was the opposite of this one, where I was rolling just gangbusters, getting crits off, and just nailing the players every single time. In this fight, I think I hit like once out of 6 times. Like, it was bad. I don't know what well, I guess I can look it up. How strong those actual Minotaur skeleton things are, which were kind of cool looking creatures. The art is awesome. They have a +6. That's nothing to sneeze at. But they don't have multi-attack. They've only got the one attack. So if you miss with that, I mean, it's very swingy. Literally, they're swinging a great axe, and if they miss, it's nothing. If they hit, they do an average of 17 damage, which is great, but that's all they can do. Very low armor class. They're going to get hit by everything. They've got a decent amount of hit points, so they did stick around, but Gillian got off her Call Lightning. Now, this was a situation where as a DM, you want your players to be able to do the things. You don't want to just kibosh everything. And I could have said, oh, this is a really tight room. You can't get Call Lightning in there. But I kind of like the idea of her really being able to show off. And it was a cool moment for that character to really show off their power. And I didn't even think of this. I do try to occasionally go through the character sheets and try to determine what the players are going to do and then try to respond to that. That's kind of like the DM metagaming in a way. Although that's also part of the experience is you want the DM to, kind of scale things to a certain extent. But in this case, I mean, the undead don't have tactics; they're just undead. And letting loose a call lightning storm in the middle of the room where I can't move around to break up my forces was devastating. Like she was getting that off on 2 of them every single round as her action. I think 3 in a row, and I failed almost every time because at least the Minotaur has a +0. The Bone Knight actually had a decent deck save, but I think it was failing too. So that was nasty for me. I think Mannix missed with every hit. That was kind of funny, but George was getting some really good hits off. And then I believe Kales playing as Zindala was able to shoot them as well. But that Call Lightning alone was just devastating. And it ended up just swinging completely in the player's favor. So that was a little disappointing because you always hope that a fight... number one, you hope a fight is at least memorable and fun. That can manifest in different ways. Sometimes it's memorable and fun for the players to kick ass and like, oh man, remember the time you did this? And I guess in this case, maybe it was like, hey, I remember that time Gillian like destroyed this room with a couple lightning bolts. That is kind of nifty. But it's a shame as the DM when I don't get a chance to like just put any kind of fear in the players at all, especially because I do think these were neat looking monsters. Like the Bone Naga, although we talked about it in previous Crafting Annihilation, had a really disappointing skill set compared to how fucking cool it looks. This is one of like the neatest looking monsters. Just giant skeletal snake. That's such cool looking. And it really is kind of a weak ass spellcaster, which is disappointing. Yes, Mad Mage, I did use the cloud spell. Well, I used Stinking Cloud, which was a level 3 spell. And their response was for Theron immediately went after the Bone Naga in initiative order. Theron made the con save, which first of all, he's got like a +7 con save because he took, I think, the con feat that gives him... I don't know if do druids have a con save built in. I don't think they do. I think he took the Constitution feat, which gave him. Let's see, what is it? Resilient. You gain proficiency in saving throws and increase it. So I think he did that with Constitution, which is why he's got a fucking 19. So he's got a +7, and because the Stinking Cloud is poison, He had advantage on the save. So an advantage +7 basically guarantees he makes that save. And then he immediately used his action to cast Dispel Magic on the Stinking Cloud, which auto succeeds because it's a 3rd level spell. And that's another, time in which I was like, okay, well, you're using a spell slot at least to solve an issue. It's a bummer the way it worked out for me in that nobody has to deal with the Stinking Cloud. And then immediately on the following round, and that does take his whole action to do it, I had the Bone Naga do the same thing. So I was like, I don't know what else to do with this creature. Like, it's just, I could have given it more spells, I guess, but it was either that or just have it attack. And I was like, well, the Minotaur skeleton's already attacking, so I'm just going to use the Stinking Cloud again. And obviously Theron just used Dispel Magic again. So I guess I'm draining spell slots in a way, but that was just funny the way it worked out with he was literally the next one to go. He's the perfect one to withstand the con save, and he's got Dispel Magic. So he was just like shut that shit down. Which was, he was just perfectly equipped to deal with that. So that's fine. It was a little disappointing. I wasn't disappointed in that because I thought that was actually a good tactic for him and allowed him to show off his, poison resistance. And I wasn't even that disappointed that Gillian was doing a lot of damage with Call Lightning because, as you mentioned, Angelo, I could have put the kibosh on it. I think we looked at that, and that was my initial thinking was you had to actually summon it from the sky. Because I think we actually looked at it in the stream. The spell fails if you can't see a point in the air where the storm cloud could appear, if you're in a room that can't accommodate the cloud. But it just says it appears in the shape of a cylinder that is 10 feet tall with a 60-foot radius. So I guess I could have said, well, it doesn't have a 60 feet radius. It just depends on... I could have gone either way. Honestly, I could have said, no, you can't do that. It's too small for a cloud, and that would have probably changed the dynamic of the fight. But I went ahead and let it happen, and I think that was fun for her character to be able to just kick ass with that spell and really use it in a way I don't think she's used to that effect ever. I mean, I can't remember the last time Call Lightning was that brutal. The thing I was disappointed on was the Minotaur skeletons missing all their attacks. That sucked. Because even though she was getting that Call Lightning off, they still lasted like 3 rounds. So it was disappointing that just for whatever reason, even with their +6, I was not able to get any of those hits off. That just felt really, really disappointing. So that's a bit of a bummer, I think. Oh well, honestly, I mean it's not a huge deal, but between you and I, it was. I wish it was a little bit. You don't want every fight to be a slog. Well, maybe some players do want every battle to be a hardcore like do or die thing. I don't necessarily see it that way. I think there can be smaller battles, but this one, I just with the cool build up and this monster and the way these things looked, the players had never faced them before. It was that all the new stuff, and they have to keep it quiet, which they obviously didn't with a fucking lightning storm. Which I tried to make that a thing as well, with the fact that they had this lightning storm going off. In this fucking room, an Aurora Borealis entirely within your kitchen at this time of year. Can I see it? No. With guards patrolling outside, because I thought this was also a neat dynamic with having another player not in the fight, although she kind of was because I let her play as Zindala, which is something I'm trying to do more of. Let players actually control NPCs when they can, not in addition to their own player, but if they're for some reason not involved, they can play as the NPC. Have Celeste actually do a role-playing scene at the same time as this fight going on. So she had to deal with some guards coming in because they found the dead body down here in the storeroom that George had killed. So that was a neat part of the DM, being able to react to something that actually happened. Have the guards come in and basically like, what the hell's going on? And nobody would normally check this room, but I was still I forced Celeste to do kind of a little bit of a role-playing maneuver, which she did, and then it kind of led to another one with Sokosh, and then I think she rolled like a crit on her Intimidate. So she was able to deflect them, even though they had this lightning storm going off, and it was not really my intention to make that unless she really just sucked at the role-playing or rolled a really bad roll, to turn that into an additional combat encounter, because again, there's a domino effect where all these things can just fall apart if I end up really sounding the alarm and doing everything. But I don't want to cheat it too much and just let the players get away. I talk with my hands too much. Let the players get away with things too much. But I feel like she role played things very well, and she nailed all the checks. So even with a lightning storm going on, it was almost a Simpsons comedic moment where like this huge scene is going on and she's just like, these are not the droids you're looking for, move along. So I was okay with that happening. I just wish that fight had been a little more, especially because I knew the PCs were about to get a short rest. So it would have been nice to see them actually having to roll hit dice. Like, oh man, that fight was a slog, but it actually was not a slog at all. I home rule, dispel magic, and counterspell. They always have a check regardless of level, too powerful as raw. Interesting. We do have home rules for counterspell, but they are they have to do with having to identify the spell first, which you haven't seen that happen here because I don't believe anybody has counterspell, so I don't have to go through the motions of like, you don't know what spell is being cast. And because we play on Roll20, this is actually, if you watched our DM roundtable with the hidden versus public roles, which was probably my favorite DM roundtable so far. We talk about the differences between using something like Roll20 versus a actual physical D&D, and part of that is you end up showing a lot more stuff when you're all staring at a screen together, and part of that is me like casting, clicking on the spell card and having it appear in the thing. So I think in a physical game, I might actually keep that a hidden thing, and all the players are like, oh, and obviously players can metagame the shit out of that, like, oh, well, this is obviously sneaking cloud or something. But with counterspell, the house rule we have is before I actually click on the spell, I make you roll a Arcana check with the DC equal to like 10 plus the spell level. I forget the actual details of it, and then that determines how much you know about the spell, depending on how well you rolled. Kind of similar to the way we house rule your ability to identify monsters, which is a way to get around kind of the metagaming thing of new monsters, is you can roll a skill check to try to determine how much you know about this beast. Because I don't know how much the average adventurer knows about the average monster. How much is that like knowledge base? So we make that a skill check. But we haven't. I don't think we had to use it yet because nobody has counterspell. But dispel magic. I mean, it's a very powerful, useful spell because yeah, the fact that it can auto do low level spells kind of sucks. But I mean, you are at least using a spell, although it's a first level spell, isn't it? It's only a first level spell you're expending to get the fact that you can use a first level spell. No, I'm wrong. It's third level. Okay, never mind. He had to use a third level spell slot. I must be thinking of a different game. All right, I'm fine with that then. If a third level spell can dispel a first, second, or third level spell, I think I'm okay with that, actually. He did have to use 2 third level spell slots. I'm fine with that. So yeah, that's pretty much all it did. So they short rested, and then we did the ritual, and this was a fun chance for me to flex, I guess, my cutscene prowess, because I really had some fun plans for this. And this is honestly a big reason why I wanted to do this dungeon as a infiltration / stealth / role-playing dungeon and not just a standard dungeon crawl, because of things like this, where I can role-play this big, cool cathedral scene. And a lot of the stuff is in the book. The framework for all these different events are in the book. I obviously embellished the hell out of this because I thought it's a really cool thing, and it fleshes out the UNT culture. You know, it gives them a reason. I love it when dungeons aren't just a bunch of monsters in a room waiting for players to knock down the doors and kill them. I like it when a dungeon is actually a living, breathing ecosystem, whether that's a lair for bandits or it's a I don't know, a hive of insects or whatever's going on. It's an active thing of things happening. You know, there could be guards patrolling, or people are engaged in an activity, and things can happen if players are in an area and they haven't tripped an alarm. Then you can just watch things happen, and that's kind of what happened here. Although, obviously, instead of watching, Mannix is actually a fucking UNT now, which is awesome. I can't believe I'm able to do that. So, and one thing I did do, I chat with Chris all the time, and I made sure to just straight up talk to him and say, hey, let's have a chat. First we discuss the shows we're watching and the games we're playing. Now let's talk about D&D. And how do you feel about, being transformed into a UNT? We didn't have this discussion before I asked him about it, before we had the session where they actually had the meeting with Fanthaza, and Fanthaza suggested it. But it was the day or two before. I think it was that Thursday night, actually, before this session, where I talked to him online and said, hey, how do you feel about this UNT ritual transformation? Is this something you are okay with? And Chris and I have been literally friends since we were little kids. So this isn't, normally I don't even have to have discussions with my players because we're all best friends and we all know each other very well. But this was a unique situation where it's like, I need to make sure you're okay with this and you understand the ramifications of this and everything that's going to happen. And we had a pretty frank discussion about it. And he actually mentioned, which I had forgotten, at the beginning of the campaign, one of the races he was thinking of playing, he was actually wanting to play like an Aarakocra or a Lizard Folk or a UNT. And he was actually leaning a lot towards the UNT because he's like, oh man, UNT, it kind of makes sense for the jungle. And I'm like, it does, but the UNT are kind of a big presence. So there would have to be some weird like story ramifications, and it probably would have made it interesting, and obviously I would have plugged all that into his main quest, but then it'd been like, well, maybe he's like the betrayer, but that wouldn't have gone over very well at all for a party. So I basically dissuaded him from playing a UNT, and he ended up just going with human, but liking the detective role the best. But he reminded me, as like, hey, remember, I actually kind of wanted to play a UNT at the beginning of the campaign, so I'm okay with being transformed into a UNT, as long as people aren't like being sacrificed in front of him for it. Like, I don't want things to be too graphic or violent, because I don't think Mannix would be totally okay with that. Mannix has very loose morals, but to an extent. Which reminds me, we actually had that Zindala conversation, which I need to talk about also. I'm in the middle of the ritual, but I'll get back to that. In fact, I actually forgot that in my recap. I need to put that in there. The Zindala thing was a big deal. So he was okay with it. I had the sacrifice happen off screen, and I loved that Mannix cast Phantasmal Force on himself as like a magical lobotomy to try and like self drug to like manipulate his own mind into thinking this is all okay. I thought that was actually very, very dark and humorous and amazing. I did not see that coming. I did not know he would do that. I thought that was great. My whole plan was to make this not a big holy ritual, but turn into like this weird, like hallucinogenic rave. I might have even gone orgy, but I thought that would be probably a little too far and a little too R-rated for what we usually do. Although we curse and have violence and stuff anyway, but have this this like rave party with this music. I even had like music going in Roll20 and all that stuff. So what I turned it into, though, the way I like to design these cutscenes is have these descriptions happen, but make sure the PC or PCs are involved. And in this case, that was through a series of saving throws, which was similar to how I did Theron's transformation, although that was a much more quicker montage and less of a big scene. But I had him roll a series of saving throws as well while he was being given the Wolverine skeleton. Here, this was a very big ritual that was, my idea was it happens over several hours, and he would have to make saves for all the different things that are happening. So he had to drink this fleshy broth, which is supposed to be like the skin of skeleton of snakes. Excuse me. I love that his mind wipe was like, oh, I'm just drinking tomato soup and all that. He had to roll a con save, a whiz save for the hallucinogens in the air, an intelligence save for the babbling of like profane, arcane words, and then a strength save to avoid being pulled under the water by the snakes in the pool. So I just wanted to have a whole bunch of different saving throws in there because I don't want to do just a series of, wisdom saves or something to make it more interesting and have different things happen, which I thought went over pretty well. I forgot that he had that stupid portent die, which are so game-breakingly powerful. If I can go off on a rant for a second, fucking divination wizards. Why would you do anything else? Props to anybody who wants to do a different kind of wizard for roleplay reasons or whatever else, because we all know divination wizard and those stupid portent dies are so powerful and so useful. Literally, he can just make a save. He failed one of them, so he did the portent die for one. He failed the second one. He made the intelligence save, which I expected him to. That's the one thing Mannix is good at. And then he inexplicably made the strength save, which he's got a +0. So he used a portent die on one. He failed one. He made the save, and then he made another save. I expected him, and each one, instead of doing damage, because that's such a weird thing to do outside of combat because players can just heal, is I did it as exhaustion, which is a much more long-reaching, pretty effective punitive punishment that was not going to result in death. So that was kind of the important factor I had. The other thing I thought of was having him suffer hit die loss, which can also be a long-reaching effect. But I think exhaustion would have been more appropriate to you going through this literal transformation. I probably could have just said, okay, now you go through you just suffer one more level of exhaustion as you transform, but I just wanted to do it with the saves, which means you could have gone anywhere from 0 to 4 levels of exhaustion, which is nasty because I believe a long rest, you only heal 1 level. So I was expecting on average he would have 2 or 3 levels of exhaustion. Again, I forgot about the portent die. But instead he only ended up with 1, so it's actually not too bad. I thought he made it out with flying colors. Catch up on the chat for a second. You don't need to know the spell, Aussie. That's correct. To go back to Counterspell. No. To use Counterspell, you don't have to know anything. You can just use Counterspell. But the advantage is, do you want to use Counterspell based on what kind of spell they're casting? So, it helps if you know if they're going to cast a Fireball or if they're casting like Shield of Faith or something. So that's the determination there. You can still use Counterspell, absolutely. But it just helps you know. And it was something like if you made a DC 10, then you get to know the spell school. If you know, what it was a system we had. We used it previously in, I believe, Storm Kings. I don't know if we had it in place for Prince of the Apocalypse. I think that's when we came up with it. Split personnel. So the other thing I did It was actually. I was thinking about the dance party. I was thinking about like raves from like the opening movie Blade. I think for some reason I was thinking of that, where it's this kind of depraved dance party ritual thing happening. I want to say it was in one of the Blade movies. Good fucking movies, by the way. What was I just thinking of? Oh, so the other thing I talked about with Mannix, or sorry, with Chris specifically, was okay. What's going to happen is you can successfully transform into a UNT. There will be some complications along the way, but you will be able to successfully transform. You do get all those abilities, but you're also saddled with a one indefinite permanent madness. I told him that because I don't want to just spring that on somebody for a permanent character altering thing like that. And I read him off the options, or obviously he could look them up too. But we talked about it and went through all of which they're on the Dungeon Masters Guild. In fact, we can look it up here, I think. And talked about really because I could have rolled for it, but I thought it would be much more effective and fun for the character to role play if he was the one to choose which madness he had to deal with. And a lot of them made much more sense for Mannix than others. And I thought that would just be a lot more effective. So we just straight up talked about the madness. And we talked about all these different options here. And the one that I think when we left our conversation, he had it down to 2. And that was I believe it was this one. I'm convinced that powerful enemies are hunting me and their agents are everywhere I go. Basically paranoia, extreme paranoia. Or there's only one person I can trust and only I can see this special friend. Which is funny, D&D for Dummies, that you interpreted that as him having a split personality. What it actually is, and he told me later he kind of wanted to do a better job of this to inform the players, because all the players were like, well, wait, what is your madness? Is that it's supposed to be he's got basically an imaginary friend that he trusts. So he's going to be talking to this person that nobody else can see. Kind of like if you watch The Expanse, which is a great show and book series on Amazon now. The main character can kind of do that with another character, at least, especially for this last season. There's only one person that they can talk to and nobody else can see them or anything. So I'm hoping that turns into a really fun role-playing opportunity for Mannix. I hope he can do the most of that. And maybe obviously he's got some trust issues already. And I think that was baked into his initial character concept was, in fact, yeah, personality traits. I'm incredibly slow to trust. So I think that works great. And I think that's a good, general DM tip is if you're going to significantly alter your players in any way, give them a heads up and just talk to them about it if you've got the opportunity, because I think that will go over much better and be way more satisfying for everybody, even if it's a debilitating flaw, especially from a role-playing standpoint. I think a lot of people like to do that. And I think, that gives a lot of characters flavor. No, very few times do we love characters that have no flaws. Characters can still be very powerful and obviously we love them, but they have very real human flaws. And that's what, frankly, makes us really love them. So that is the indefinite madness that he was saddled with. And I look forward to having him role play that. Oh my God, Venture Brothers, Lumpy, yes. I love Venture. I never finished the last season, the one that was like only online or something weird. God, Venture Brothers is such a fucking good show. It's such a good show. That was like a decade ago that show was on, but yes, Henchman 21, that's very similar to that, where he would just talk to him. I remember the voice actor wanted to kill that character off because he hated doing the voice. And but fans loved it so much that they kept that character around like as a ghost that the other character would talk to. Great stuff. It's just absolutely great reference. But now I have before we get into the split party thing, Zindala's conversation. So the other thing I wanted to do, and I really wrestled with on how to do the Zindala artist thing, and ultimately I punted it to the players. Because I thought the more I keep to myself, the more I don't know what's going to happen. And the more I have to be able to ad lib and the less prepared the players will be, sometimes that can be effective if you've got a fun twist. But honestly, I'm really liking the players having more of that information to work with and letting them work through how to deal with it. And it's fun as a DM to give your players information and then sit back and watch them deliberate. I've said this countless times, but one of my favorite times as a DM is when I don't say shit because the players are engaged with each other about debating whether that's how best to handle a tactical combat situation or how best to handle an upcoming role-playing situation. And this was a really interesting example of that is I had Zindala go to Mannix after that fight because they finally got a chance to talk together. They'd been apart literally. This was really the first time they had a chance to talk. And there was some downtime, that classic like action movie. We just had this big action sequence, and now there's some downtime, and the characters can do some character development. And she straight up confessed that Artis is not her father. That's not her game. She's in it for the Ring of Winter. And the players weren't terribly shocked by this, interestingly enough. But it was an interesting revelation that they had to deal with. She, I had this whole conversation written out where she was imploring to the players, help me get the Ring of Winter. Like, this is kind of the next step of the quests, and I will pay you guys more. And I tried to beseech to them, like, look, in a very practical standpoint, which is to say, because my players don't, I appreciate all those groups that can do some emotional storytelling beats. We don't really do that too much in my group. We haven't had those, we don't really, I don't know if it's our age or if it's our group dynamics or what's going on, but we tend to have more, I don't want to say lighthearted. I guess it is kind of lighthearted. We don't have a whole lot of really strong emotional storytelling moments. I'll say that. It would be nice to have some, even though I do try to tie things to the characters a little bit more tightly. But for the most part, at least in this campaign, it hasn't really come up too much. And the Zindala thing, I was trying to maybe do that a little bit. I was trying to say, look, has Artis with the Ring of Winter helped you guys at all? Like, he could have used the ring at all these different situations. I mean, she didn't. That's kind of me as the DM. Excuse me. Metagaming a little bit. But saying, you guys have been having hard times throughout Omu. Has he ever used the Ring of Winter? At the very least, he could have busted down the doors of this temple and killed every, Yuan-Ti inside and, use it to its full abilities. And I tried to roleplay her as less a stereotypical greedy, mustache twirling, megalomaniac villain because I don't think that's very interesting. And frankly, might even be a bit of a hard left turn for her. And instead made her more pragmatic and more about that personality trait where it's like everybody else is just stupid. I have to do this myself, which is not an uncommon personality trait. I have to do this. I just have to. I should have the Ring of Winter because I have the will to wield it. And frankly, I'm not role playing as Zindala is necessarily evil at all, but the ring is evil, so it would definitely corrupt her. But and that's something the players would have to decide on their own. But her whole thing was, hey, Artis doesn't deserve this. He's just being hunted. He's not using it, whereas the ring could have been used to stop all these tragedy, which I used. This was my MCU moment where I talked about the apocalyptic element, the Prince of the Apocalypse campaign, the Storm King's Thunder campaigns. Like the Ring of Winter could have been used at all these different times to help solve these global catastrophes and crises, as well as this whole death curse business. So I try to beseech the players in that way. Mannix obviously was not happy about the change in the contract, and his whole deal was like, look, I'm gonna bring you to Artis, and then you guys can figure it out, which disappointed Zindala. But I wasn't too surprised at that being the resolution. I was really curious to see how the party would do it. And what's interesting is it kind of showcased the group's differences in their personality. Because George was like, hell yeah, fuck yeah, let's go fight Artis and take the ring for you, whatever. He kind of doesn't care. He's very amenable in that way. Theron is actually probably the moral center of the group, even though Reese doesn't speak up that much. But when he does, he's very forceful about not being a big, murder monster that adventurers can a lot of times lean towards. So he was like, no way, the ring is evil. This is not happening. You don't get the ring. Kaless, if you notice, was being very quiet, and Heather, obviously we talk all the time, and she was like, Kaless wants that fucking ring. Like, that's, so I love the way that all the different characters, different player characters, are kind of role playing their own characters in how to deal with this situation. So I was really pleased with how that is kind of fracturing the group. Not to a like, we're all going to be really mad and petty at each other, but to a, okay, we actually have to deal with this on a group level where some of us are for this and some of us aren't. I'm still not sure where this is going to lead, but this is the culmination of Mannix's personal quest, is to deal with the Zindala artist triangle. What, I guess that's a line, but the triangle with the party now. So how do you deal with that? And Zindala even mentioned, like, if I'm fully rested, I can use my magic, hinting at the fact that she's a high enough magic user where she can cast Dominate Person, I believe, and force artist to give me the ring, but I need backup to take out Dragonbait because I know he's got that fucking, and I did try to play her up as being a bit of a dismissive asshole with, like, he's got some guardian of a lizard person. She doesn't even know what the hell he is, which most people actually don't know what he is. He's not from Faerun. To deal with Dragonbait. So it'll be very fascinating to see how the players deal with this. And I thought it was a fun way of me showcasing, here's a future event that you all have to plan for down the road. So that'll be really interesting. The interesting thing is, I have kind of endeared Zindala to the group by having her help the party in this dungeon. I also think that was a good idea. Pat myself on the back for that one. Because if the party had just randomly found Zindala at the end and she was like, all right, help me take the ring, it's like, well, who the fuck? We're not going to help you do that. But because Zindala is with the party, she's helped them every step of the way in this dungeon, and Heather is literally playing her in combat situations. I really think that endears Zindala to the party, even though Artist was also obviously an NPC that helped the party. So it's going to be really, really interesting with two friendly party NPCs that are at odds with each other and how the party is going to deal with that. I'm really looking forward to that as the culmination of Mannix's personal quest. I plan on unleashing that as soon as they leave the temple, with the caveat that I would like Zindala to get a chance to long rest after the dungeon before meeting with Artists. Just so she has that ability, and she's got her full abilities, because obviously the easiest thing for the party would be for them to just turn on Zindala, even though that would be, but if she's not at least fully rested, then she's just kind of screwed. So hopefully she can at least get a long rest and get her spell slots back, but that will be in the future. So that was a very, very long post-mortem. We've had a lot of things happen, and now we need to prep for next session. Thank you. Which I guess, talking about Zindala's prep. So here's the problem I'm running into. I like the split party dynamic. I actually expected that to happen because it was never my intention to just showcase one player and not let anybody else do anything. Which in this case, it was showcasing Mannix being part of the ritual and having that be a big focus that happened with him. So I had Ishmael tell the party, hey, by the way, every 90% of the temple turns out for this ritual. So if you guys want to explore and maybe even try to get your way into Rosnisi's chambers, this would be a great time to do it. And that was a hint that I, as the DM, basically dropped to the players, and they did that. I did not expect Kaless to just straight up stick with Mannix. I thought that was actually really sweet, based on their backstory. Mannix basically hired Kaless as his bodyguard, so they were kind of together in a business sense before starting this campaign. So I thought that was a really nice gesture that she actually stayed behind, because she didn't know that he was going to come out of this successfully, or he didn't know what, she didn't know what the hell was going to go on here. So I like that she's kind of remaining here with Mannix. And I like that the party was able to split up. Here's the issue I run into, though, is the time difference. I need to move Zindala over here. So I like that the party split up. to explore. I kind of expected them to explore more of these rooms. Instead, they're not really interested in, which I guess that's fair because you run into instant like alarm triggering situations. Whereas your goal is to get the puzzle cubes. You want to try to make it to Rosnisi's chamber. So, Gillian was able to which George almost fucked things up there. He was going to just attack this, the UNT Malice on that was here, the slave master. But Gillian was able to use role playing to basically do the same thing George did to the snake, which was like, hey, let us basically come in and you go look at the ritual. I let that happen. They befriended which this is actually in the book too, the young boy who's basically speaks for the slave master because the slave master doesn't care about the slaves, but the boy is kind of the liaison between the two. I did not expect George to get so friendly with the boy and hand him a bunch of hand axes. The problem I'm running into for next session is that my intention was the ritual that Mannix is a part of lasts for several hours. And the split party of Theron, George, and Gillian and NPC Zindala is about to embark on their own adventure while Mannix is in this ritual. So the problem is I kind of montaged Mannix's stuff through several hours to where he became a UNT by the end of the session. But during that time, this is happening. So I'm going to have a really weird situation where Mannix is currently frozen in time, or at least all the stuff that happened last session is basically still happening. And Celeste, same thing, because she's there, while the rest of the party is exploring here. So the problem I'm running into is I literally don't have anything for those 2 players to do, while these 3 players are doing this. Now, an obvious solution, Celeste can control Zindala as she's been doing. I have 0 problem with that, and that's an easy solution. But I don't have anything for Chris to do for Mannix. I could have him control this young 10-year-old boy who's now got hand axes, but that I'm not prepared to kill a child in combat, and he would not be. He has no training with these axes. Like, it just seems like there's all kinds of ways for this to go horribly, horribly wrong. But maybe I could talk to Chris about doing that. I need to have a conversation with Chris about. I guess probably tonight, how best to handle this situation, because my intention was this ritual is still going on while the party is doing this. And the problem is, it was okay at first, but the problem is they're about to have multiple combat encounters, which is going to take up probably the majority of the session. So this is going to be a straight up combat encounter with the Brood Guards. I don't see... the Brood Guards are, and I've kind of hinted towards this, they are designed to just auto hostile to anybody that's not a UNT. The slave master was a little goofy because he just didn't really see the difference. He was kind of hilariously racist. I guess all UNT have the racial superiority thing, but he literally was like, "Well, what are you, slaves with weapons?" This is very odd, and they could kind of trick him. So you can kind of trick the higher ups, but the lower guards you actually can't trick, which is kind of the opposite of how a lot of guard situations work. But in this case, this is going to be a straight up battle here with these Brood Guards guarding these boats. And then presumably from there, unless the party wants to try to get through this locked door and back into the temple and deal with Jopel, which I will have a scene in there just in case, they will find the exit to the dungeon here. But they can go up this river. And there's a whole river here. There's an odd side cave, which I may actually... there's a really weird encounter here in Area 22 it's a bunch of slime and mold, and you find a corpse from some UNT that worshipped Zugdmoy, and there's some weird backstory that you would never know with this like corpse that you find. And the whole thing is that it's got a key. It's got a key to the entrance, so the party doesn't need any of that. So I'm debating on if I want to even put some, there's some mushroom monsters I could put in there with like maybe some treasure and just have a whole side thing. But again, how much do I want to do that knowing that part of the party is not with this group? Otherwise I just put like a hard wall here or something. So I'm still debating on if I want to use this. The other thing is once they get to here, I got a fucking Hydra that's in this river, and I have told the party multiple times, I have dropped the hint that there is a giant monster in the river. You know, I even had Cody confirm, he's the young boy they found, that dead slaves are fed to this giant multi-headed beast. So is a split party going to fight this? Because they see Keenan going down this river, and I'm going to have them fight this big fucking Hydra, which would be fascinating. There is a doorway that leads to the UNT barracks, which are basically currently empty. I put them on the GM layer to show that it's basically empty. I mean, I could have like one or two that are maybe ill or something in there for some reason. Maybe two of them are like, I don't know, having sex in there because it's everybody else is away, so they get a private room. I don't know. I could do something funny if the players decide to go through that door because they wouldn't know. They'd be like, well, maybe this is the throne room. But either way, they would be fighting a goddamn Hydra up here, which, I mean, having a split party, that's one way to make this fight a lot harder. In fact, I want to look and see. And I mentioned before, I'm actually looking forward to using a Hydra because there was a Hydra in Prince of the Apocalypse, and I mentioned this in a previous Crafting Annihilation. I never got to use it because the party never made it to that room. It's their own fault. It is their own fault. I know. Well, I don't have a problem with them doing it. The problem I have, as I mentioned, is the fact that I can't do the, and meanwhile, this happens because I basically went through all of that last session. Like, that was the big ritual that happened. And I guess you could argue to say, well, his session was last session, but I really don't want to have an entire session where one player does nothing. So I don't know. I'll have to debate and see. The easy solution is that Kales can control Zindala. Maybe I do have that little boy, and Mannix could have, or Chris could have fun doing that for some reason. Or I don't know. I'd have to come up, or maybe he's okay with like, look, let's just let them do something, and maybe I can come up with some different scenes in the ritual. But I mean, again, I kind of already fast forwarded to him having the becoming the UNT. Well, what's interesting is I could sync it up a little bit closer because my idea was if they make it all the way to the secret chamber, Rosnisi, and I mentioned this last time, if you recall, that during the ritual montage at the end, Fenthaza addresses Mannix after Rosnisi leaves. So I even hinted at I told them Rosnisi goes back into the teleport chamber, and my idea was it resyncs the events. If the player, assuming the players make it far enough to make it inside the chambers, Rosnisi will obviously teleport in at the opportune moment, so the split party have to deal with that. And be caught by them, which Rosnisi, again, that's not necessarily a fight. Rosnisi, they could just talk to Rosnisi. What's fun is that Heather and Chris are the strongest role players in our group. And if we split the party like this, that forces some of the other players a little bit out of their shell and gives them a chance at the spotlight to do, which, you know, we had that role-playing scene with Gillian, for example, because it was George was kind of leading the way and kind of starting to fuck things up, and Gillian had to take charge. So I am enjoying it from that standpoint. The only thing that worries me is doing entire combat sequences where some players are not involved. That's the thing that kind of worries me. Catch up on the chat again. A child with hand axes would be almost as effective in combat as Mannix. I don't know. I mean, Mannix actually does, you know, we shit on Mannix a lot, but honestly, as he's leveled up and gone more wizard, and kind of turned into like a melee wizard, I feel like, I mean, he's still a glass cannon for sure, but he can output a pretty good amount of damage. He was hilariously fucking up with that Shadow Blade the first time he used it in that combat sequence, but I actually think his potential is getting a lot better, but that is funny. Have them bring the dead slaves that attempted the ritual to feed the Hydra. Ooh, that's not a bad idea. That would definitely sync things up better. I'd kind of like the Hydra to be this, like, you know, emerging from the water, this monstrous heads, you know, your boats, you have to roll a save to keep your boat up while this thing, I don't know how deep this river is, actually. Varies between 5 and 30 feet deep. Okay. And I think it likes to be, does it submerge itself? Hydra's lair. A Hydra lurks underwater in this vicinity. It sure does. Although it says Let's see. To call the monster, their captors sound the rowboat bell and hurl the hog to... Ooh, so the brood guards could actually sound the bell. Is there a bell over here? There's not really a visible bell, but I guess I could describe a bell. If I wanted to do the Hydra combat here, and just turn this into one big single encounter with a bunch of brood guards, that would be an idea too. Instead of meeting it on the river. Is there an NPC following the party right now that another player can control the purposes of combat? Yeah, Mad Mage, obviously Zindala, which we've been doing. I forgot why previously, but I had Kalest just control Zindala. I think actually last session. And I'll continue to do that. I think that's a great solution. The problem is I've got 2 players that would need to control people. And the only other one I have is this 10-year-old boy who's recently been given axes. He literally has the stats of a commoner. I mainly just don't want to kill a child. He's got the that magic immunity. If you play like the old... which game actually had children? I don't think any of the Elder Scrolls games don't have kids in it, do they? Or do they? I don't remember. I know the Bethesda games, if they have kids, you just like straight up can't injure them at all. They've got like just straight up game immunity for that reason. You don't want to go down that road. You could have the Hydra at the throne room landing, being fed by Rosnisi. Then it could be a role play encounter, or give Chris the Hydra. That would be interesting. Hand over the reins of a monster to a PC in that case. The Hydra at the throne room being fed by Rosnisi. The dead slaves thing would make more sense for sure. I could have that would be an excuse for Rosnisi to come in and have it like be right here. I guess that would give the chance for the players. That is interesting. So now I'm thinking about how to alter the Hydra encounter. You could. It just depends on how much I want to make this like you're in the boat, the water churns, this beast comes up and attacks, and it's a big combat encounter, or give the players a heads up by the time they reach this part in the river. Although, I mean, that means like nothing that happens at all during the river. Like you're just going along these tokens and nothing's happening, unless the players want to explore the barracks here. So that's the only nice thing about the Hydras. It kind of breaks that action up. But I could have them with the dead slaves here. Rosnisi appears with some guards. I'll need to move the tokens back, and literally like ringing the bell, and the Hydra is not appearing because the party just killed the Hydra. That would be interesting. That could be a solution to turn that into an interesting role play encounter if I want them to still deal with the Hydra right here. Role play encounter. RP with Rosnisi between Kalest and Mannix due to him successfully surviving. Kalest and Mannix have to feed the rest of the dead ritual participants to the Hydra. Let them do it. That's not a bad idea either. So all of these are assuming that we sync back up with the timeline. My initial issue was that all of these things happened while Mannix is still in the middle of the ritual because it's supposed to take place over several hours. But we might have to do some kind of magical time distillation thing and say, well, you guys spent several hours like fighting these guards and then getting these boats ready, dealing with this scene with the slaves, which they didn't even really like. I was kind of disappointed they didn't even try to like do anything with them. They just were like, all right, well, peace out. We could just say that they do sync up at some point because I do think that needs to happen just from a gameplay standpoint, even though it might not make the most sense story-wise because that was my intent. Or maybe I just changed my intent and say like, well, the ritual just took an hour or something. But yeah, it could sync up. I like the idea of it being synced up around the time maybe the ritual is ending and reaching its crescendo when the rest of the party is fighting the Hydra here, which is why nobody hears anything. And then when they finish the Hydra fight, we can kind of sync back up with Kalest and Mannix. And then they are tasked with feeding the dead slaves to the Hydra, which is now no longer there. I I can't make them short rest, but that would solve the solution quite well. The problem is they kick ass in all these fights. They don't even need a short rest. They also just had one. So the only issue with that plan, which I like, is that still leaves us with the Broodguard fight and the Hydra fight. And this whole mushroom thing, which normally I would be for, including just a random side thing in a dungeon, but because of the split party dynamic and the time distillation problem, I don't necessarily want this split party to be doing too much. Or maybe I do. Maybe they find some kind of random ass mushroom ally that Mannix can play. Do I have any mushroom monsters in here? How do I even look that up? Nobody's called mushroom, are they? It's like Myconid and what am I thinking of? There's some kind of like purple mushroom thing that can attack you. It's all like Underdark shit. Let's see. Do I have the monster manual? I don't think I actually have the monster manual in Roll20. Might actually have to crack open my monster manual. Oh. Because that could be a solution, is at least give a Mannix, or just put a fucking... I could put Shopel in here and let Mannix control Shopel, maybe. And maybe Shopel's like harvesting mushrooms and fighting. I could make this a whole scene. Maybe Shopel's harvesting mushrooms to create to create a more virulent poison. Shopel's got his zombie allies with him, and they're fighting off some mushroom creatures. Although, maybe I'm getting too complicated. Then Theron would probably want to just kill all those zombies, as he is wont to do. What are my options here? Should I even do anything here? I could just close this off with dynamic lighting and just say there's nothing here. It wouldn't affect the UNT since they're immune to poison. Maybe the child won't shut up and he and George talked for hours. Maybe. Right. So the idea here, I don't want to throw too much stuff at them. My idea is not to have this take too much time. Shopel is actually trying to create a poison that will affect even people immune to poison. And I don't know why he would do that, since I think UNT like their poison immunity. Maybe just to make their poison stronger. Because maybe UNT have to deal with poisonous creatures occasionally, and they're like, our main thing is poison, so we need stronger poison. Poison! I'm just trying to use things that I already have access to, in other words, without having to create entirely new character sheets. But I don't even have to have an enemy in there. I can just have Shopel in there with his zombies, and they're harvesting mushrooms, because why would there still be enemies in there? There's still all the... What does it say it is? It's yellow mold and green slime. Green slime. What is green slime? No results found. All right. What is it? Yellow mold. No results found. Well, god damn it. What is this shit? Is it Dungeon Master's Guide? I remember they're like hazardous trap things. Fail me. Roll20. Compendium. How dare you? Somebody give me a page number. What is this stuff? Unusual environments, maybe? No. Maybe dungeon. Or traps. Let's see this. Where is... I suppose there's an index somewhere. Look up hazard. Hazard. Hazard is 1Z. Hazard. Dwarves. Hazardous duty. All right. Fuck off, Compendium. Why are you screwing me on this? Maybe I don't have the Dungeon Master's Guide. It should be in the standard rules. Let's see. Yellow mold and green slime. Where are you? These are unusual... Oh, that's not it. Unusual environments. You just get to hear me mumble my way through the Dungeon Master's Guide. How fun is that? Mapping a wilderness montage, dungeon hazards. I found it. Page 105 is the answer I was looking for. Don't make the mushrooms a fight, just make them trip balls. Green slime devours flesh, organic material, and metal on contact. Clings to walls, floors, and ceilings in patches. Patch of green slime covers a 5-foot square as blind sight out to it. The slime has blind sight and drops from walls and ceilings when it detects movement below it. Is it fucking sentient? Creature aware of the slime's presence can avoid being struck by it with a successful DC 10 Dex saving throw. Otherwise, the slime can't be avoided as it drops. Does it say it's in the doorway? A patch of green slime clings to the ceiling above the entrance and drops on the first creature that passes underneath. It sure does. Creature comes in contact with green slime, takes 1d10 acid damage. The creature takes the damage again at the start of its turns until the slime is scraped off or destroyed. Against wood or metal, green slime deals 2d10 acid damage each round. Alright, so it's just a fucking trap. A DC 10. Dex saving. I mean, okay, fine. I guess I could do it, but it seems minuscule. Yellow mold. I'm just seeing if I actually want to use any of this. Covers the skeletal corpse, which I'm probably not going to use the corpse anyway, but I could use the spores. Don't I already have... Hang on. Isn't there a fucking spore thing in Tomb? You know you're not properly doing D&D prep until you've got multiple open books in front of you. Stacked on top of each other, ideally. I mean, I've already got endemic plant life to Schult. Can't I just use that? That's not like an encounter, but like a trap or something. That would help break things up, because I've already got enough fights. Flora and fauna. Zabu mushrooms. Releases its spores in a 10-foot radius sphere. Any creature in the area must succeed on a DC 10 con saving throw or be poisoned for a minute. The poisoned creature's skin itches for the duration. I guess I could use that. A minute is not very long, though. It's basically a combat encounter. But, so... I'm leaning towards putting Shopel, who is in Area 14, assuming the players don't go in there. That would fuck me up if they do. Or whatever, it's empty right now. Maybe just a couple zombies. Shopel is a UNT pureblood who is... in fact, I can do this in Roll20. Where's my... Fane, Area 14, I believe. This is really my first big mega dungeon of the campaign, right at the end. South door is locked and contains a poisoned needle. God, and it permanently blinds you. Wow. The blindness is permanent, but it can be cured with lesser restoration spell or symbol of magic. That is really funny if somehow Gillian ends up triggering this trap, because she has had so many issues with eyesight. UNT uses chamber to extract venom from snakes. Zopal, I pronounce it Shopal, as it's whatever I want it to be pronounced as. Bottles and blends the venom to create a deadly new strain. 5 human zombies serve Zopal as laborers. Zopal carries a bronze syringe containing 3 doses of poison cocktail. As an action, you can make a melee weapon attack with the syringe. +3 to hit, which deals 1 piercing damage and injects 1 dose of poison on a hit. DC 14 con saving throw, taking 3d6 poison damage on a failed save. In addition, the creature is poisoned for an hour whether or not its save succeeds. Shopel believes it's his destiny to transform into a much more powerful form of UNT that will occur when he develops a poison so virulent that even innate immunity to poison can't withstand it. Shopel uses the zombies as test subjects. He's also got a number of bottled poisons And he carries the key that unlocks the southern door. Inside is a bunch of poison stuff. So that would be a role-playing encounter with the caveat that Theron hates the undead and would probably start a fight here. Which I don't want to necessarily do. Although zombies aren't very strong. They would probably be able to destroy the zombies. But that would be an interesting solution. I've never done that before. Because I have a situation where a player is not with the rest of the group, and in fact they have their own thing they're doing, I could give a NPC to a player even to like roleplay. I'd be like, hey, Chris, can you play Zopal for this encounter? That might be interesting. That's something I'm going to discuss with him. Hopefully tonight I'll chat with him about this whole situation and see how he feels about it. But I like the idea, if I'm going to use this room, eliminating the whole weird corpse and the shrine of Zuctami and all that, because that's just weird extra shit that doesn't have anything to do with anything else, and put Zopal in here as somebody who is harvesting. Yeah, I probably need to put a boat here then, actually. In fact, I have a boat. The boat is there. Question, can two people ride in a boat? Let's see. It doesn't. It's the way the boat does it. You can't even put one person properly. All right, if I make it. There we go. Now it looks like you could put two people in a boat. Okay. Let's go ahead and actually put them on the layer. The layer. I don't really need you to say boat as the name tag, Roll20. I appreciate that, but the boat does not need to be named Boat. If anything, his name is Boaty McBoatface. That's decent. All right, and then we'll put another boat here. And that'll be like telling you that somebody is here. And I like the idea of Zopal being here with two zombies. He probably doesn't let the zombies even be in the boat with him. He probably just takes the boat himself, and then the zombies can just walk along the bottom or something. Because the Hydra, generally, from what I understand, doesn't come down here unless the bell is actually rung, if I'm reading it correctly. Nisi treats his beloved pet and regularly feeds it. The Hydra's victims are bound and ferried on rowboats over the deepest part of the river. To call the monster, their captors sound the rowboat bell and hurl the hogtied victim or victims into the water. Okay, wait, you just said you're bound and ferried on rowboats. Are you hurled into the water, or are you bound and ferried on rowboats? Your shit together. When it remains fed, the Hydra avoids any boats that ply back and forth. When a rowboat bell is sounded, the Hydra surfaces within 1d6 rounds. If it's not fed immediately, it attacks the boat. The Hydra attacks any boat that ventures north of Area 18. Swimmers are also fair game. Which basically means... Wait, north of Area 18. Where's that? Oh, 18 is here. Okay. So yeah, its lair is right here by this rock. It doesn't look like it's the deepest part of the river, but... Especially because it's got a... This looks like the shallowest part of the river, in fact. Maybe I'll put it... I don't know. Where should I put this Hydra? I still like... Okay, so here's what I'm thinking. If you notice, I did not do much prep before Crafting Annihilation. I'm probably going to skip all the yellow mold and green slime bullshit. I will probably include some mushrooms that can explode. In case this ends up in a fight, then the zombies can like crush the mushrooms almost inadvertently, and then that will set off these bombs of. Shoot, where's that page? Those we make those Zabu mushrooms. And a 30-foot radius, DC 10 con save, or be poisoned for a minute. And you can even repeat the saving throw, which I think poison just means you have disadvantage. Pissant. Poison, please. Yeah, disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks, so not the end of the world, but could be interesting. And is flavorful. So if we move Zopal and... we're going to make it 3 zombies. We'll make it 3 zombies. Make it a little more interesting. We'll leave 2 zombies there at the place. Zopal is currently here harvesting. Why do you people all have light? You don't need your own light. We can go ahead and roll for hit point. I mean, this is... The awkward thing is this is not meant to be a fight. This is meant to be a role-playing encounter for this group to deal with. But I have a feeling it may very well end up as a fight. Because Theron, at least, his personality trait is that he fucking hates the undead. So he would not... Oops. Be very cool with this situation. So I'm going to put them all deep in there. So that'll be an interesting thing. The party can just choose, like, oh, we see a boat there. Do we go in this cave? Like, they don't really know what the map looks like either. Shrieking eels from the Princess Bride. Let's go ahead and roll hit points for these guys. 3d8. 8 plus 9. Players have fought zombies so many times. But it is flavorful and in keeping with how the UNT work, and specifically how this one would work, which is to keep zombies as slave labor. I think that's kind of funny. Even in death, you will serve the UNT. 5 and 19. Hey, guess what? I bet that equals average. Even in death, you will serve me. All right, so I've done that before, passing an NPC to a player, and they love having the ability to mess with the rest of their party in a fun way. Yeah, I'm gonna talk to Chris about it, to make sure he's okay, and if he is, then I will go ahead and give him the information about what the situation is, so that he's not completely like, wait, what's going on? And with the caveat that Kales will be okay with just controlling Zindala. The bummer is Zindala would normally be a lot more interesting character to play, but because she's almost completely exhausted, she's got very little spells and things she can do other than throw out cantrips. But at least you are an NPC with spells that you can do. So, I should roll for these brood guards too while we're still on here. How much do these? Because I do expect this to be just a straight up fight, especially since the party ended up with the last fight with flying colors. I do want to kind of drain them a little bit and force them to engage in a few fights that are hopefully going to be a little hairier. Whoa! Look at these hit point rolls. Every single one of them above average. One of them is 60. Their average is 45. God damn, these are the cream of the crop for guards. Holy shit. One of them is like big and burly. 60, that's nuts. What a great roll. I don't know if I've ever rolled that well on random hit points before. What is their max? 78 plus 56 plus 14. I think their max is 70, right? 56, 60, 70. Yeah, almost max hit points. Every single one of them is above. I don't feel bad about that at all. Pre-rolling stats and characters is the best part of these things. Yeah, we love to see the rolls. All right, so plan for next session since I'm running out of time. The party, this is mainly going to focus on this split party. The last session focused on Mannix, although there was some things the other party could do, but it was really about Mannix going through this transformation. And now this session is going to be the other half of the party, essentially. I do plan on syncing them up, and I'll do some more prep work tonight and tomorrow. But the plan is this party, and I don't plan on having Cody go with them on the river. They would have to do some severe convincing, but Cody would have no, especially even once combat breaks out, he's not going to. I don't know. Well, I guess I appreciate George trying to be like the mentor, but like this fucking little kid, or I don't know. Maybe I'll change my mind and I'll change it so the little boy is a bit crafty, give him some better stats, and let Chris control him. Maybe that would actually end up being better. So I will. I'll have to actually make my decision there. But the party will fight the Brood Guards here. They'll make their way up the river. They can choose to stop here or not. Explore the cave. They'll meet Chopal, who is just making a bunch of poisons. Obviously, if Zopal sees this party, he's going to be very concerned and probably not easily tricked, but he's also not really a fighter. So he'll want to just kind of like be squaresies and be like, look, you guys go along your way, and maybe the party can like intimidate him or do whatever, and he'll spill the beans. He's like a scientist. He's not really a fighter. So it could turn into a fight, but more than likely a role-playing encounter, or neither. Maybe the party just skip it. Let's actually see what they can see from here. Jordan, to answer your question, I think it specifically says, the water varies between 5 and 30 feet deep, and the current isn't strong enough to present a hazard to swimmers. So that tells me it's really not, unlike the river rapids they were on earlier in the campaign, it's a very calm moving river, probably barely moving at all. So if they've got the rowboat, even swimming checks, I'm not sure. Well, you think about that. If the party ends up capsized in the deepest parts of the water with the Hydra and starts treading water, maybe there could be a con save exhaustion thing going on there. I'd have to think about that because that would create a bigger fight. Now I can see why there's a thing here so the party can get on the rocks and actually fight him without being... Ooh, you know what we should do before I get off? We're going to roll a hit point for the Hydra. We need to roll hit points for the Hydra. What is your average hit point? Hydra, you make as many bite attacks as you have heads with your delicious +8, and you've got 5 heads. For each head, it gains an extra reaction. That's so cool. I'm really excited about this monster. All right, Hydra, what do you got for hit points? You've got 15d12 plus 75. Actually, you know what? Before we do that, we're going to turn on the 3D dice because I want to see all these dice being rolled. GR 15 D12 plus 75. Show me the dice. Oh shit. I mistyped. Holding pattern 15 D12 plus 75. Drag and roll. Oh, I didn't have the auto roll. My bad. There we go. So many D12s. 178. That's above average. I'll take it. All right. Turn that back off. So I'm going to put it right there. Although the party might stop and dock the boats. Which is probably when I would unleash the attack. Or, well, I could put it up here. That would actually be more room. It drives me crazy that its lair would be in this like shallow. I mean, I get this is better for the players because they have a chance to fight it on land. But on the other hand, fuck the players and make them fight it in the water. I may actually move it right here. And everybody, and then, because why the hell would they? Well, I guess they would drag some victims down there and the Hydra would make its way all the way down. But if anybody dies in the Fane, they would be dragged over here. And Rosnisi can feed the Hydra personally. Yeah, so there'll be that fight there, assuming the players don't want to explore. Maybe that'd be really funny. I prep all this Hydra stuff, and all the party decides to dock right here and go through this door and try to figure out where the fuck they are. That'd be pretty funny. And then it will sync up around the time, assuming they continue north. I guess that'd be the advantage that they keep Cody with them, because Cody might be able to tell them things. Or Zopal, if they kind of capture Zopal and keep him with them too. Mannix and Kalest can be tasked with dragging the bodies over here to feed the Hydra, and that can be a really fun role-playing scene where instead of the Hydra showing up, it's just the other players in boats, and they're like, yeah, we fucking killed that Hydra. And then the party is together to presumably deal with Rosnisi, although if you notice, I put Salida up here as a fun... My initial concept was to have Salida recognize the party, and so she would immediately sound the alarm, and that would lead to a fight in this throne room, because I feel like there should be one as kind of a final boss fight to get to Rosnisi. And obviously Sekalok would be there as well, unless the party go through some kind of really interesting role-playing situations. But remember, they probably just fought a fucking Hydra too, some of them at least. So these are all my different machinations. I'm sure the players will throw multiple wrenches into the situation, but the main thing I need to do is talk with Chris and see, and talk with Heather and make sure they're okay with possibly just creating or playing other NPCs while their characters are still in this situation. And then maybe, depending on how long these combat encounters go, we sync up towards the end of the next session. And then finally meet up and see where we go from there, because the Rosnisi one is not necessarily a fight either. They can just say, hey, Roz, you're dying because of the Soulmonger, and you need to give us the puzzle cube so we can go in there and kick Acerak's ass. The deal is no good. And then you'll be freed of this curse. And he'll be like, that sounds great. All right. I think those are my plans for tomorrow's session for Tomb of Annihilation. Some things may change between now and tomorrow night, but we will see. I'm also just now realizing that tomorrow is Valentine's Day. I haven't talked to my players about that, so hopefully none of us are doing anything. We'll see. That'd be interesting too. If we had a player missing, then they would just, they would take on the role. So, but as of right now, we're still going on Friday. So, thank you all for joining me for this. Oh, before I get off, I want to test the poll, because for some reason the poll did not work. I don't know why. There it goes. Okay. I don't know why it didn't work last time. Maybe I was signed in under the wrong account or something. But my plan is to have towards the end of each session, the chat, the live fans will be able to vote on who their favorite player was, and that just whatever criteria you want to use. Thank you. And then that player will earn inspiration. So I was just testing to see if that poll was going to work, which apparently it does. I will cancel that. Too bad. Can no longer vote on the poll. All right, so that should be able to work for next time. All right, so thank you to everyone for joining me for the stream. I'll be streaming tomorrow for my Let's Play Invisible Ink, and then for tomorrow's Tomb of Annihilation. We have a DM roundtable starting in about half an hour. I got to go eat lunch. So patrons, please join me for the DM roundtable. We're going to be recording on Discord. I'll be putting out a reminder for that, but I'm going to go eat before I hop on for that. And I will see you all otherwise tomorrow for Tomb of Annihilation.